Bring back Giants pride needs to be an emphasis on culture and toughness. I think there's always been an emphasis on culture and toughness. That's what every new GM and every coach has tried to instill. But it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it. I think I mentioned this before, but I read a book about the power of habit, right? Forming good habits. And like Tony Dungy went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and they had a lot of bad habits. But through repetition, in practice, and in every film session, and in how he prepared that team, the players didn't have to think about what they needed to do on the field in the heat of the moment. They did it. They just did it because they had formed good habits. So that's why I get so pissed off when they say, we had a good week of practice. We had a good week of practice. If you're saying you had a good week of practice and you're playing like dog shit in the game, you didn't have a good week of practice. What are you doing in practice that is making you think that you had a good week? Because you're obviously not doing the things that are happening in the games that cause you to lose. When you lose and you have the mistakes that you do, the next week of practice should be focused on how do we eliminate those mistakes, how do we learn from those mistakes, and how do we prevent it from happening. And you drill that, boom, 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 boom. You drill that into the players' heads. But you know those car commercials when they show you, like, it's ridiculous, but they show you, like, we've tested this car through the most extreme conditions, and they show, like, frigid freezing conditions, and they show extreme heat, and then they show stress tests. Are we stress testing players during the week of practice? And I understand that there are a lot of rules and limitations and whatever surrounding practice in modern day NFL, right? And it's to preserve the players' safety and health. Completely understand that. But there are ways that you can still boom, 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 stress test players. You have a false start problem. We're going to go on a different count every single snap of practice. If you false start, old school mentality would have been, you give me 10 push-ups, you give me 10 sit-ups, you give me 10 sprints, 10 laps. I mean, Joe Judge kind of did that, and it got old quick because the team lost and continued to lose. So I don't know that I'm advocating for take a lap if you false start in practice. There have to be consequences for your action, and there has to be another way to approach that. You get called out. You get singled out. You get reamed out. I mean, there's got to be something that you're doing so that it's a Pavlovian response that motherfucker is never going to false start again. Illegal procedures, illegal formations. We're in the latter half. We're in the home stretch of the season. How are we still fucking that up? How are we still fucking that up? And again, it goes back to, you're saying you had a good week of practice, but what did you address in that week of practice? Did you address that this guy continues to do this? No? Well, then that's the result you're going to get in the game. And that's why Brian Daboll, that's why I disagree with that statement, that that's on the owner and the GM. It's not on just one person. I mean, that has to be clear. You can't keep saying, point to one person, say that's the person. Everyone wanted to point to Daniel Jones, say that's the person. He's part of the problem. Just like Brian Daboll is part of the problem. Joe Schoen is part of the problem. John Mara is part of the problem. Daniel Jones was released, so he's no longer part of the problem. Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, I would think, either they both go or Brian Daboll goes. Because if you're saying, okay, the 2024 draft class is great, and that's basically only Joe Schoen's saving grace, what are you saying about Brian Daboll that is his saving grace? John Mara, he's always going to be part of the problem because he's not going to sell. I don't think we should focus on John Mara. To me, it's Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, and if you're debating between the two, what the fuck has Brian Daboll shown you that makes you think that he's part of the solution? What the fuck makes you think that? Joe Schoen, a little bit different. I think you like to say, okay, well, the 2024 draft class. So in my eyes, they're both, if I've said this before, I'll say it again, I'll triple stamp that shit. I would move on from them. Just move on. I don't care that Dave Gettleman got 4 years. Just move on. If anything, You don't, and so people say, well, you gave Daniel Jones 6 years. You gave Dave Gettleman 4 years. In hindsight, in retrospect, that was a mistake. Let's not repeat that same mistake. Let's not do that again. Just because you had that happen doesn't mean you have to do it again, especially when it didn't work out.